Hi. Hello. Hello, this is the My Artifact episode number 4120 24 25, maybe 25, yes. Today's date is wait, let me adjust. Yeah. Little bit. Okay, this is good. Okay. So today's date is June 27, 2026. It's been almost like a morning at 8:12 a.m. All right. We just jump to the question. All right, let's go. So question is, what if user self harm? Okay, self harm. Okay, that's really very like a very serious question. Okay. Okay. First of all, what exactly is this question, and why am I asking this question to myself? I wanted to build an app called My Artifact. What exactly is this application? When you write the diary, every single time you cannot able to be write the diary the way that you wanted to. The reason is that your thought process are actually much more faster than your writing speed. How much you put effort, but you cannot match your writing speed with your thought process. When you because of writing really required a lot of amount of effort. You need a pen, you need a paper, you need a convenience, and even after that you did not match the kind of like assembly thought process of the way that you think. You cannot print your thoughts by words. Okay. And because of this kind of like assembly, it's too much amount of effort required to write the diary. That's why very less amount of people, or almost no one, is a kind of like a writing a diary in these days. But what if instead of writing a diary, what if we could record a diary, like a audio record a diary? The stuff that you are kind of like watching right now or listening right now, this is my audio diary. I called it My Artifact. My Artifact episode number 4125. I am doing this thing for past 11 years. I am doing this thing every single day. Because of writing a diary is a self-reflection process, so as recording a diary, recording artifact is also self-reflection process. The amount of value add inside of me, it's like, yeah, the person that I became today and the person that I will become tomorrow, it is all because of artifact. The amount of value it add inside of me because of artifact, I want to share this value to the people. How do I supposed to do that? By building an application. My application is somewhat something like a YouTube platform. In a YouTube, you kind of like somebody record your video, other upload your video, other people kind of like a sees your video. Same thing, you kind of like a record your artifact, upload your artifact in artifact platform, other people kind of like a listen your artifact. Okay. Before I wanted to build this application, I wanted to aware of all the possible consequences, specifically worst possible consequences, and so I went to ChatGPT. I said that I tell my idea, my app idea, everything. I said that he suggests me hundreds of worst possible consequences in question. ChatGPT kind of like a suggest me question. This is one of those questions. By the way, question actually in the mobile phone, but while recording I cannot do anything at all. So that's why I wrote the question in here. This is the question. All right. So this question is very serious, by the way. All right. So, yeah. How what if user do self harm? Okay. Okay. What's a self harm? A self harm means like that. Like example. Okay. A particular user is kind of like a going through very tough situation. Okay. Tough situation means like let's just say a kind of like a simply teenager, a woman, a kind of like a girl. She's a teenager. She put lot of amount of effort in studies and things and that, but she didn't really crack the exam. Okay. or maybe she kind of like a something like a had a breakup or things and that, like whatever the situation. Okay, so she's a kind of like a very vulnerable because of artifact is a kind of like a something people writing a diary. So usually people are kind of like a record such a thoughts too, that ki they will try to kill themselves and things and that and stuff like that. And it will be a very common in artifact, because I also feel the same thing, because when I was kind of like a doing a job, I was literally dying every single day. And literally I wanted to kill myself, or I don't want to live, like I don't, like basically just I don't want to. Yeah, at that time it's just like so much pain and things like basically usually pain is kind of like a usually refer to a kind of like a physical pain, but the emotional pain, there is no kind of like there is no one calculate the how much emotional pain that we've been through. Now artifact is a kind of like a platform where usually people record such a thing. They kind of like a somebody that ki like user are kind of like a very emotional and things, and usually these are kind of like emotion we do not kind of like a express in front of anybody, because of that it's a very kind of like a feel like that keep personal and things and that. Then at that situation we are kind of like being really alone, and that's why we being alone, that's why we kind of like a record such a thing in artifact, or kind of like a things like that. Like basically it's this thing that higher chances that people will kind of like a talk about such thing in artifact. Okay, and kind of like a suicidal thoughts and things and that is called kind of like a self harm. So imagine a scenario that ki, let's just say a particular woman from Singapore, and she's a kind of like a age of 20 or 19, and she is kind of like a wanted to kill herself because of she didn't really kind of like she put a lot of effort in study, but she didn't really crack the exam or whatever. She wanted to kill herself, she wanted to end the life and things and that. So in that situation she kind of like a recorded that key stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff. So in that situation what do I supposed to do as a company, as a chairman, or as a like what do I supposed to do to handle that situation? Usually this is a kind of like a very like a very kind of like a very kind of like a very serious thing. Okay, one thing I will not gonna do. Okay, what is actually one thing I will not gonna do is that key it is kind of like a very easy for me that key I will kind of like a somebody say this thing okay, this is the piece of content or this is the piece of artifact that kind of like a somebody user are kind of like a harm, self harm, and me and my company, if I decided that I will not gonna kind of like a take part of it or things and that, so I would kind of like a ban such a content or remove such a people and things and that. But that is a completely wrong approach, completely wrong approach. Why? Because of that it's kind of like a some people who are talking about those stuff, those are very isolated people from the all around the world. If and they are kind of like a sharing this thing in a platform in artifact, and if I'm kind of like a somebody say this thing that I will ban or block or whatever it is, then they will kind of like isolate more, and higher chances that they might gonna kind of like end their life, because they are already vulnerable. And if I'm kind of like somebody making them more vulnerable, then yeah, obviously I will kind of like protect myself from that chaos, but that is not a solution. Artifact is not meant for kind of like somebody is just saying that kind of like if the person is kind of like a chaos situation, I will kind of like leave that thing. It's not that thing. But also I have to also understand that na ki this is a very very serious situation, very serious situation. Those people, they didn't really talk with their parents, they didn't really talk with their friends, they didn't really talk with their government or things like that and that. They directly talk into the artifact. Now artifact, I am from India, the woman, that girl is actually from Singapore or whatever the country, things and that and that. Okay, so basically is this thing na ki it is kind of like a feel like that ki like like what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that na ki people will kind of like a say, like I don't know how I supposed to explain this thing. It's a kind of like a thing that na ki I wanted to protect them, but I want to protect myself too. Okay, because it's a very serious situation. things might went wrong. Let's just say that woman killed her life, end her life. Who is responsible? Me, my platform, or whatever the situation happened with her? Okay, and also is this thing it is also a crime too, because if you know that that particular person will gonna end your life, and you will not inform that information to the law agency or enforcement or things and that, and you just stay quiet, that is also a crime too, because you have a chance to save that life but you didn't save. That is also crime too. Okay, it's not crime in India, but basically it is a crime in other country too, because there are laws and things and that. Okay, so in that situation, how do I supposed to do that? How do I supposed to make sure my platform is safe, but as well as a thing is that if the people who are really vulnerable, really somebody that going through very tough situation, in that situation, how does my application will provide the help? I was actually thinking about that. I do have an idea, I do have a thoughts, but let me tell you what I do. I'm not really sure. I don't really have a somebody that keep somebody step by step guidance or protocol regarding about how do I supposed to do that. But I will execute some sort of things. Okay. Let me tell you one thing. Usually is this thing that people will say this thing that they will end the life. Okay. Now this is somebody, if I'm gonna say it's a very serious situation, but sometimes you have to understand the context. What do you mean by that? People usually say this thing very normally, like I am really a fucked up myself, I will gonna end my life and things and that. So in this context, I mention I will gonna end the life. So does that mean I will gonna end the life? Basically what I'm trying to tell you is this thing: I will gonna end the life, or I will kill myself, or things and that. These are very common word. Okay, common word. Okay, yeah. And people usually mention those words in the sentence casually. Okay, so in that situation, I have to be understand, if the user say this thing, I will end my life, I will kill myself, or things and that. So does it really mean she is doing it or not? Because let me tell you one thing, why is actually happen. Okay, who will judge the artifact? Millions of billions of people will record the artifact. It's not really that every user listen the things and that. No, it's not. Adam will try to analyze basically what is actually happened, that Adam will Adam is a AI algorithm. Okay, so Adam will analyze what she say and things and that. And when she says that she will end the life and things and that, Adam a red flag that this is a some user or artifact is wanted to kill herself or kill her life or things and that. Consider as a a highlighted artifact. Okay, to me, that this is a somebody a user wanted to end her life and things and that. Why does Adam realize that? Because Adam understand that she mentioned she end her life and things and that. But Adam does not know the context. Okay, Adam does not know the context. So basically what is actually happened, okay, I already mentioned that every artifact is actually something a process through Adam. Adam is a judge every artifact. Okay, Adam is a artificial intelligence, by the way. Okay, so what exactly is actually happened? Okay, so in the backend, okay, if you are the user, I already mentioned your data is a utilized to train the Adam. Okay, train the AI. Okay, I am telling you, when you are sign up, you will also get this thing that your data is utilized by some Adam to make sure that the platform is a much more better and secure platform too for everybody. All right, one thing. Let's go another thing. Now, because of Adam is analyze what is actually stuff that you said in the artifact. Okay, so in the backend, every person is a a recording artifact regarding about something. And because of this thing, Adam creates a somebody a personality of you, which what a person you are, and try to create that person. Okay, it's a very difficult to understand. let me kind of like explain to you in simple language. Sorry about this background noise. It's a okay. Yeah. All right. So basically, what exactly happened? Sorry about these noises. Come on, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off. All right. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned, that Adam is a kind of like a simply creates a kind of like a sort of profile about you, about every user. Okay. So whatever the user kind of like a record the artifact, Adam try to create that personality, that what is exactly this particular person. Okay. Yeah. It collect the information from the user, from the artifact, that key is he lying, is that particular user is a kind of like a happy, sad, emotion, what kind of like a person that he wanted to be, a physicist, economics, a teacher, or whatever it is, what is actually that particular interest, things and that. Adam collect the data from user, every user. Okay. Yeah. And try to stitch that data from kind of like a create a kind of like a avatar, create a kind of like a things that this is a kind of like a particular person who kind of like a this and that. Okay. Yeah. So let me tell you the it's a very simple thing. It's not really simple thing, but it's a I'm kind of like simply tell you the scenario. Okay. It's maybe should I go the Google over here? Okay. It's here. Okay. So I'm kind of like simply explain this thing. So do I found any kind of like some pages? Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do the doodle over here. Okay. This would be kind of like a much more better. Okay. So this is the kind of like some things. Okay, I'm gonna kind of like try to explain to you in simple language. Okay, so let me explain first. Every person has a kind of like some different thought process regarding about what is actually that particular person and what is actually that particular person thinks and that. A user who is a kind of like a sharing a information regarding about self-harm, who is that particular person? Okay, that particular person might be a vulnerable. Okay, let me tell you one thing. Let's just say a kind of like a, let's kind of like imagine this is a kind of like a only person. Okay, this is a kind of like a particular person who kind of like a something is this thing that he wanted to end her life and things and that. Okay, yeah. But how that particular person is kind of like a somebody here. Okay, yeah. Here means like a alone. Okay, he's alone, that's why alone or kind of like empty or maybe kind of like a broken up or maybe kind of like a lost something. So that's why his state is a kind of like a somewhat something as a kind of like a something vulnerable, and that's why that particular person wanted to end her life. So basically is this thing, before fixing this situation, like this situation, fix the situation before. Okay, fix the situation before. Why? Because fixing this situation is not really right thing, is not really okay. Like basically is this thing, I believe in a solve the problem before it even exists, not after the problem happened. After the problem, if like I could able to be say this thing that key, if the user kind of like somebody been through kind of like a such a situation, then probably what exactly happened that key kind of like a give them proper helpline or things and that or kind of like whatever the stuff. Okay, yeah, are you kind of like a really good or maybe kind of like things, but I don't really kind of like holding the user information, so it's also very difficult for me. But kind of like somebody, let's just say a kind of like a somewhat something that key I might have kind of like a somebody user profile, so I might kind of like a give them a kind of like a helpline number or things to kind of like a make sure, but it does not solve the problem that much. It solve only maybe 30%, 70%, still she vulnerable, even if I'm providing all the helpline, everything. Even if I kind of like a personally went to her and try to solve her the situation, still I might gonna solve only 30%, 70% I might not gonna solve the situation. Why? Because of that the user are already been vulnerable. Okay, yeah. So problem is not solving this state. The problem is actually solving previous state. Okay, yeah. Previous state means before. I believe in solve the problem before it even exists. Usually this make sure that this particular person kind of like a feel really alone, vulnerable and things and that. So make sure that na ki why she is kind of like a things. There is a kind of like a multiple steps. Okay, yeah. So if the particular situation, if the particular person kind of like been through that situation, that she's a vulnerable and thinks she might lost something, okay, so make sure that before state is a kind of like what she been through. Take a simple example. A particular woman is a kind of like end her life because of that she been do study a lot of, okay, she is a kind of like a teenager, she is a kind of like doing a lot of study, and she is a kind of like she didn't really crack the exam, and that's why she wanted to end the life. Okay, now basically is this thing, what is actually previous situation. Okay, yeah, like this is a kind of like a situation that I already mentioned. She wanted to end her life because of that she didn't really crack the exam. Now in this situation, previous situation, okay, she is a kind of like doing lot of amount of study. Okay, she is doing lot of amount of study, and kind of like a things that if she is kind of like doing lot of amount of study, so that means she is a kind of like expecting to be a she will gonna crack the exam. All right, yeah. And I know the situation because she is kind of like a recording artifact. She kind of like a mentioned that she is kind of like doing a study and things, and that exam is really important for her life and things and that and that and that. Okay, yeah. So in that situation, okay, yeah, in that situation, Adam try to kind of like assembly do the kind of like assembly predict what will be possibility. Okay, as I mentioned, Adam is a kind of like assembly prediction model. Adam predict the future. Okay, yeah. If the user kind of like a record artifact regarding about her exam is how much really important to her, and how much kind of like a really essential for her, how much exam that is really matter to her, if she didn't really crack the exam she might gonna end her life and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. So basically Adam will try to kind of like check her that this is a kind of like a person might be kind of like a somebody will come to that stage, and in that stage she might gonna kind of like do the kind of like a stupid shit and whatever. So in that situation, what is actually Adam will gonna do? Because of she's a kind of like a recording artifact, that means she is a kind of like a listening artifact too. So in that situation, kind of like somebody recommends such an artifact that uplifting her, not a kind of like somebody pushing such an artifact that kind of like somebody how much focus and important things, kind of like uplift her. Because of Adam has a kind of like an entire catalog of kind of like every artifact, what is actually the happy, sad, kind of like emotion, anxiety, upliftment or things and that, whatever. Okay, happy, whatever it is. Okay, so Adam kind of like recommends such an artifact that is a kind of like a happy, such a kind of like a upliftment, such a kind of like something that meaningful the life and things and that. These artifacts is actually recommend to her so that she might gonna listen. Okay, why? Because of that she will kind of like create a particular kind of like a persona regarding about life, that life is not just kind of like an exam or things and that. Life is also be more beautiful too. These people are already experienced, and these are artifacts, these are kind of like a hearing right now. So because of I'm kind of like sharing such a information to her, with her I recommend such an artifact with her, so she will kind of like feel like, okay, it's not really that important to crack the exam. Okay, yeah, that and that. And if she kind of like somebody thinks that okay, maybe she cracked the exam, she might not crack the exam, I'm not kind of like affecting her kind of like a performance in the exam, definitely not. I'm kind of like telling that exam is not the only one priority in her life. Okay, yeah, life is also really beautiful and things and that. So because of this kind of like artifact, she might little bit of kind of like simply have influence that okay, life is also really good. Okay, things and that. One exam cannot able to be decide the future life and things and that. Okay, so if I kind of like treating her artifact or kind of like recommend such an artifact that upliftment, happy or beautiful or kind of like things and that, then whatever actually happened with her, that might be she kind of like does not crack the exam and things, even if she didn't really crack the exam, she will not gonna end her life. Okay, she will not gonna end her life, or maybe she will kind of like end her life, but chances would be almost like a 50% less. 50% less. Like let's just say in this situation, she say she will kind of like end her life, probability would be kind of like 100 out of 100. But before I kind of like recommend such an artifact that kind of like uplifting and things and kind of like a better value of life and things and that, her chances or probability of kind of like end her life is almost like a 50, because I already kind of like showing such a beautiful life is actually available over here. Okay, available and things and that. So this is a kind of like a way or protocol that I will kind of like make sure that user will kind of like not gonna do self harm and things and that. okay, to kind of like a fixing the problem before it's even existed. So this is a kind of like a some approach that I was kind of like a thinking to kind of like a make sure that user will not kind of like a some self harm. But still it is a kind of like a lot of things. Okay, what's a lot of things? Because okay, I already mentioned, okay, I will use user data to train the Adam to kind of like make sure the platform is kind of like a much more better for you, not only for you, for community and things and that and that. Literally, it's like that. It's far more easier for me to kind of like give the helpline, give the kind of like a things, provide the local authority, give the information to the things and that and that. But that is not a solution. Trust me, I've been through. Okay, when you are kind of like a facing problem from here, external kind of like a things does not solve the internal problem. It's solved from internal things too. Okay, so this is kind of like only my approach, but I don't know how to supposed to execute this thing. I do know like basically I will train the Adam to kind of like make sure that such thing will gonna not gonna things and that and that. So yeah, but still is this thing that na ki I will also kind of like provide the helpline. Okay, yeah, because let me tell you one thing, it's far more easier for me to kind of like say something like that ki kind of like I will kind of like provide the help backend and things, or maybe before the kind of like things and that, it's far more convenient, easy and stuff. It kind of like sound really cool to say, but the real situation came, I might went scared too. Okay, we are human, we are really scared. And because of, let's just say, a kind of like a particular woman kind of like did something, not particular man, woman kind of like did something stupid, she end the life, who is actually responsible for that? Am I the responsible? My company is responsible? Their environment situation actually responsible? That is a very much thing, and this will gonna happen too. This will gonna happen even if I'm provide that many things. This will gonna happen too. Like basically, let's say probability. If I'm not kind of like using this kind of like a technique, then probably maybe kind of like 100 out of maybe kind of like assembly 50 people will kind of like do the suicide and things and that. But if I'm kind of like using this technique, from 50 maybe kind of like assembly 5 or maybe 7 people will kind of like end the life. Okay, yeah, this will gonna also happen too. And 5 and 7 people are died because the kind of like a suicide and things and that, then it is also kind of like a feel like that, yeah, I didn't like kind of like provide that many help. Also, I will kind of like provide the helpline and things for kind of like a better approach for kind of like a seek a help, or like there are kind of like a lot of NGOs, lot of kind of like some organization committee are actually available all around the global, that if you've been through mental situation or things and that, not mental situation but kind of like a stress situation, there is a lot of people who are kind of like a listen your story and things, and they will kind of like give you better approach regarding about how the life and things and that. Okay, yeah, but still it's a very scary thing. Okay, yeah, life is really beautiful if you are like, I also been through, okay, I've been failure a lot. If I'm gonna tell you my story, I've been fail a lot. Okay, let me tell you one thing. Okay, yeah, like basically is this thing na ki if you are watching this video, then probably is this thing that na ki you've been through the same situation and things and that. I tell you my things. Okay, what is actually I've been through failure. I am 32. Okay, and couple of months later I will be 33. I am 33. This is my parents' home. I'm not earning any money. I'm living with my parents. Every day I kind of like somebody heard a lot of things regarding about lot of stuff, that you are pathetic, stupid, shit, you are kind of like somebody, lot of stuff. It did really hurt, but kind of like a feel like that ki let's just accept this thing, because sometimes na you don't have any kind of like some solution. You can't argue, you can't say, you just kind of like do your work. I believe in that. I am like a legit failure right now. I'm kind of like saying a lot of good stuff into this thing, but I'm really shit. Imagine yourself, you are 33 old, you are living with your parents and not earning any money. Obviously you might feel pathetic. I also feel much more pathetic. At that time I became something much more bigger. Okay, but in today's situation I am lot pathetic. Okay, also it's not only that, I fail multiple times, so many things. Like basically is this thing that ki in 10th, okay, in 12th, sorry, 12th standard. You have to kind of like, if you wanted to go to the engineering college, you need a kind of like a something, a particular marks, 135 marks out of 300. 300 marks came from physics, chemistry, mathematics. These are three subjects, 300 marks. Out of 300, I need 135 marks to get into the engineering college. I didn't get it, 135 marks. Okay, yeah. Even after that, in that same year, there is a kind of like a new rule came that ki, even if you are kind of like a belong to the kind of like a backward community of the people, like a SC ST, okay, then for you don't really require 135 marks, you need 120 marks. Okay, yeah. Even if the criteria went low, still I am not kind of like a fit into it, because I get 111 marks, so I didn't fit into that rule. I didn't get into the engineering college. All my friends, everyone went into the engineering college. I went to the diploma college, engineering diploma. I thought that I will kind of like do my engineering diploma. I kind of like get a direct second year. Okay, engineering diploma kind of like takes 3 years, but because of I went to direct second year, so I have to be second year and final year. Okay, yeah. So time required to me to complete this diploma, it just kind of like a 2 year. Imagine how many time do I really require to complete this? Almost like a 5 year took me to complete 2 year of diploma. 5 year. Okay, yeah. I'm fuck. Okay, whatever. Like I've been through a lot of situation and things. Okay, whatever. I wanted to be a kind of like, I realized that I'm not really good in studies, nothing really at all. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to become a filmmaker. I wanted to go to the Bombay, kind of like somebody became a kind of like somebody like a whatever, just be a kind of like a get into the films and things and kind of like a try to do this thing. Okay, yeah. I went to the Bombay. I kind of like did study, realized that I might not able to be do this thing, because I'm recording artifact, and I realized that I might give up very easily, because I am not a kind of like a particular person who will handle that situation. It's far easier to kind of like say this thing that I might gonna face the situation and things and that and that and that, but still when you are kind of like facing the reality, that is really worse. I realized that I might not be a survive in the Bombay. Okay, and things and that. So my friend kind of like suggests me to do a job, kind of like a create a backup, and from that backup use his backup to kind of like went into the Bombay and kind of like do the kind of like filmmaking, simultaneously do your job. This kind of like a really helpful advice. That advice is actually given to my friend, and it is kind of like a really good. Thank God I complete diploma. I didn't went to the graduation. I didn't went to the engineering. So I kind of like get a job in a kind of like a Nagpur city. I kind of like doing this thing and that and that. Okay, yeah. I realized that I would kind of like do this kind of like stuff, create a backup. Then I went to the Bombay. It does not really work. I lost 4 years of my life. Nothing really happened. I never really went to Bombay. Nothing really happened, because there is no kind of like a energy left inside of me after I went to the job and things, and there is no energy left. I'd never really done that thing. COVID happened. I lost my job. 4 years of my life learning, study to kind of like understand, be a kind of like as a kind of like a particular person that I wanted to be a kind of like a creating backup, or kind of like realize that I wanted to become something that I should supposed to create things. 4 years of my life is actually lost because of the COVID happened. I lost my job. I came home, and I realized that I am not a particular person that kind of like do a job, do a 9 to 5 job, and kind of like settle life and things and that and that. I realized that if I want to become a filmmaker, I have to be kind of like do this thing. I know that because of the COVID kind of like lost the job, but it's also kind of like give me opportunity to kind of like somebody show my talent and things and that and that. I started creating videos, uploading videos on YouTube platform. I went to the kind of like a casting director, casting producer, sorry, ad agency producer. They mentioned that because of the COVID, we are not hiring, but probably you are kind of like use this time to kind of like create a story or videos or things like that, and share that kind of like a movies or like a YouTube link to us, so that we will kind of like verify that how good you are, and from that thing we will kind of like offer you some sort of job and things and that. I said, yeah, definitely. I started making a kind of like a lot of kind of like a shorts, movies, or kind of like a short films or things and that from by myself, whatever, from the mobile phone and things and that does not really work. I kind of like took the decision. If I kind of like went to the Bombay, I didn't really have money, because if I went to the Bombay, I really required at least like 1 lakh rupees per year, and I will not gonna ask money to my father, because I am already crossed that threshold. I am living on their roof and asking money, it doesn't really feel like I don't really feel like I don't want to ask the money. That is the only one thing that I realized, that I don't want to ask the money. And basically, if I went to Bombay, then probably is this thing, my success rate is also really not really that good. So I decided that YouTube is a kind of like a things that I will kind of like a work on myself, kind of like a do this thing and that. I will continue doing my work, continue doing my YouTube. I started creating content, travel filmmaking. I did it for almost like 8 months, but then after that I realized that I might not have that much amount of money or for the travel and things and that. I did not do this thing. I started kind of like a gaming content, because gaming content is kind of like a far more easier and cheaper to kind of like a do this thing. I spent almost like a 2.5 years to kind of like a do the gaming content. Does not really work at all. I fail very miserably. Okay, yeah. Then all those kind of like a things, I already crossed almost like a 31 at that time. Then I decided that no, let's kind of like a something is this thing, let's kind of like a do something that Photoshop, photography, graphic designing. I try to do this thing, spend almost like a 2 year of my life do this thing. I still have 1700 subscriber. I am not earning any money. I am 32. I am living with my parents. I'm so pathetic. I am the particular person should supposed to be killed or end the life. How? But I'm doing it that. I am stupidly failure, dude. Okay. And like basically is this thing that if you are kind of like decided that end your life, I still have hope. Okay. I am reading this book. Okay. This is kind of like stuff. Why? Am I kind of like proving something that I'm kind of like some smart things? No. I don't know what exactly happened. I am building this application, this artifact. Why? Am I trying to prove something? No. I don't know. Am I recording this artifact? Am I trying to prove that I am kind of like did a lot of failure, I'm kind of like so much great and things? I don't know. I don't really have any solution. Sometimes it's just like that we've been through failure is because of that we need to understand that life is not meant to be the way that you design. There are so many kind of like things and that. You don't know. You not know what is exactly your life. Obviously, I am not a particular person to kind of like give you any kind of like advice regarding about what is exactly life and things and that. But I am so fuck at this time. I am judging myself sometimes that how fuck I am, that I'm still living with my parents, and I'm 32, I'm still living. It's so wrong. So I have to end my life, right? But no, I am doing this thing. I'm reading this shit. I'm recording artifact. I know I will kind of like build the artifact. So, dude, failure is just like that, it crippled. Yeah, literally it crippled. It literally just end your life. It just you wanted to but it's a very very easy. It's been very easy to kind of like end your life, but it's very hard to fight with your life. If you are that particular person then yeah, whatever, this is it. Okay. This is a kind of like a step that I will gonna do to kind of like make sure that make my platform is as much as better as possible. Thank you.